Kicking off our new series on Cleanse and Detox, Clearing Your Path to Health, is none other than health and wellness expert David Avocado Wolfe. This episode is absolutely packed with so much take-home information that you better make sure you have your pen and paper ready to take notes. David explains the importance of eating black foods, the necessity to build your Jing energy, the most important foods and nutrients for our kids, his number one detox supplement, and his personal message on where humanity is moving to in the near future. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. And we are kicking off our newest series on Cleanse and Detox today. So we have a really amazing group of speakers for this series, like we usually do for most of our series. We are going to round out the concept of cleanse and detox and go well beyond just physical detoxification. Like we do in a lot of our series, we are going to expand this into the 5 bodies of health as we look at everything from physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and beyond. So today, though, we wanted to talk to David Avocado Wolfe. So we've been trying to get a hold of him for a while. We finally were able to nail down a time to speak with him. And what a perfect topic to have his interview. David, if you've followed any of his work, David is an expert in so many different things. He's been in this industry for decades. He's done so much. He's an absolute avatar in the world of health and wellness and food and nutrition and superfoods. And he's a wealth of information and he lives it. He lives it. You know, I think when we were interviewing, he had just come out barefoot, picking pine pollen in his backyard to come in for the interview. So this interview is absolutely loaded with information. So make sure you've got your pen and paper because there is a lot of stuff that comes up here. We've got a list of things that we go through, and he really gets into breaking down even some of the different colored foods and the different effects that they have on the body and why they're important. He specifically talks about black foods and why those are so important, particularly now. We also talk about a concept called Jing energy. So we might know of things like Chi energy, but we're going to talk about Jing, and there's a difference between those two things and why we particularly need to support Jing and what foods and supplements to take to do that. He's going to share with us his number one detox supplement. He's going to talk about the supplement that he's found is by far the number one for anti-aging and for helping us live a longer, healthier life. And this is one that you can use regularly and you can also use with your kids. This is something that we do personally and we also use with our kids. So make sure you follow along and take note of that and maybe give that a try. He has a bunch of different concepts. He talks about things like what to do with detox deniers. We look at the top 3 foods that kids should absolutely take. He talks about if you're on a vegan diet, how you need to support it with certain key things, when you need to, when you're earlier, and what shouldn't be done when you're earlier with kids. He even gets into some of the astrological information that he's aware of what's going on in the world. And he shares at the end his personal message on what he thinks is going on and where humanity is moving to and what we can do to support ourselves and others in that transition. So tons of stuff going on. This is a super fun interview. We're going to have David back for sure again in the future because we had such a good time chatting with him. So hope you guys enjoy this episode and make sure to share, to like. This is really what helps us get our information out more than anything. It's you guys sharing it, liking it, and suggesting it to other people. So we really appreciate all of your support in helping us get our message out. So thank you very much and look forward to talking to you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast and to our newest series on detox and cleansing. And who better to kick off this series than David Avocado Wolfe? This is an interview that we have both been excited to have. I love David's work and we've been excited to chat with him about this. I could go through David's bio, but it would probably be about as long as the transcript for this entire episode. So I'll summarize, but David is an avatar in the worlds of nutrition, superfoods, longevity, just living an inspired life overall. He's a best-selling author, multiple books, a health industry innovator. He's a sought-after public speaker and a world-renowned expert in health and wellness. And today, David is going to join us and share his decades of wisdom to help us learn best strategies on improving our endurance, healthier longevity, and just best practices for detox. So detox is a big, big topic, and that's why we're doing a whole series on it. And we're going to get David's perspective on that. And if you've been following our series, you'll notice that we do different series that we genuinely think are most important to bring people at a specific time. So the one we just finished up was Know Thyself. So if you haven't checked that out, go and watch some of those episodes. They are questions designed to facilitate a return to who you truly are. We need to get back to a place of inner authority as opposed to just giving our power over and an outer authority that basically runs our life. So if we don't take control of it, somebody else will. So check that out, because I think that's really important information to learn. And now we are moving into, how do we actually support our physical body? What do we need to do to support detoxification processes? Why is detox such an important thing? So David is going to kick us off with this. So David, welcome to the show.
Greetings. Thank you guys so much. And it's wonderful to be here talking about my favorite subject. I'm in the third week of a detox currently right now. And we've been basically tailoring down our food. And then we got onto liquid diet. And then this week we're on the water fast. We're on day 3 of a water fast. And it's just a very important discipline and skill and spiritual practice to inculcate into our daily lives. And the way it works is you start with just trying it once. And I've got a friend of mine today, I just had him on the phone. He's a very famous artist, and he got to day 3 on the water. So he completed day 3. I was trying to get him to do a week, but he had never done a single day on water ever. He's 54. So this is how this message is permeating out there into our culture, into culture. He's a cultural icon. A very interesting painter by the name of Justin Bua. You may have seen his art before. He's from the streets of New York and eventually worked his way to LA and now living in Texas near us. And we're here in Texas where I'm learning a whole new ecosystem and a whole new way of life because I've never lived in this ecosystem before. But anyway, back to your point, detoxification is about lowering those critical thresholds of metabolic and environmental toxins so that we don't cross a certain line where it's the straw that breaks the camel's back and we start breaking down. This is a problem that gets worse with age, and it kind of escalates very quickly according to the research in terms of, like, when you get to say 45, everything's still working. 55, you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what's going on here. But 65, all of a sudden there's such a buildup of metabolic and environmental toxins that we may cross several critical thresholds of carcinogens, for example, and all of a sudden we get into a cascade of crisis. The best thing to do about that is to consistently start with, just like my friend Justin, one time. He finally did the 3-week cleanse with us. So he did the week of 1 meal a day. And we can talk about the specifics of how we do it. Then a week of all liquids. And then we go into the water fasting. And the whole time we're doing enemas and colonics and laxatives to try to get all the waste out of our system so that the lymphatic system looks into the colon and goes, hey, there's nothing in there. Let's dump all of this toxic mess out that's coming out of our bloodstream and our metabolism and into our lymphatic system, and then drain it out the colon and get it out. And when you do this, you're usually losing somewhere between 10 to 30 pounds, and that's common. I've done cleanses where I've lost 28 pounds in long water fasts. I was like, whoa, what's going on? And that's really a wonderful thing if you're really trying to get that stubborn weight off. And it's really something that connects you much more closely to your creator. When you're in a water fast like we're in right now, there's nowhere to go. You have to face everything. You can't hide it with food, but we work our way slowly there. And everyone's like, no, I would never, like my friend Justin, I could never do that. But I'm like, just follow the protocols and you will get there. And sure enough, he did, and everybody does. So I've worked this out over the years. I've tried 4-day preps for water fast, 11-day preps for water fast. Just turns out that 2 weeks is the right amount for most people. And then we get them to 1 day on water, and then we can work them maybe to 2 days. And a lot of people get all the way through the whole week. They never did a water fast in their whole life, never thought they had the discipline to do it. That's another one too. That does amazing things for your self-esteem, incredible things for momentum in your life, because you realize, wow, I did it. I was capable of doing it. I had the discipline. All our lives we're taught that we're not smart enough, we're not strong enough, we don't have enough discipline. All this stuff we do. We actually do have enough discipline. With this cleansing process that we do 4 times a year is very difficult. I will say that. You have to take it day by day by day, and it will bring up a lot of stuff. But when you do that, you'll get those toxins out. You'll cross below those critical thresholds. And we say, actually, by the time you get to the water, you're on God's operating table. That's going to be tomorrow for me. It's usually day 4 when you get fully into ketosis. Then you're on God's operating table and everything. You just go, God, fix me, correct me, fix what's wrong, and then just in a 2-hour meditation, it's all coming in.
Mm-hmm. I love that, David. Tay and I did a water fast a while back, a few months ago. It's sort of a 7 and a 9 day water fast. So it was just straight water. That was it. And
And it's something that we had been desiring to do. Like I had been wanting to, like, it's interesting how you have it broken down where you go from certain foods to then liquids to then water, because that's kind of been the organic sequence of what I personally have been wanting to gravitate more and more towards for the past probably 2 years. I went from not even desiring food that much, but really wanting to have lots of green juices, like waking up in the middle of the night 4 times to just chug down a liter of green juice. And then it was gradually desiring more lemon water throughout the days. And I feel like now I'm even at a place where I would be totally content with just drinking liquids for longer and longer durations. And mind you, we're also in Mexico right now, and we receive a lot of sun. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. But yeah, it's interesting because we did it for 7 to 9 days, the water fast. And you're right, the level of confidence and the strengthening of the will, which is, which is definitely a spiritual practice, because it's going back to that. One of our friends, RJ, refers to it as the iron will. And it's like, that's looking around now, we feel like so many people would benefit from a practice like that in order to return to a place of greater confidence and just a boost in their capacity to step up and exercise their own will. So so beneficial.
Well, and it even, like, as you were kind of saying, because it turns into almost like a spiritual practice after a bit. And even will, it's like you can kind of have, like an egoic sense of will, which can kind of push you. But it's almost like when you're doing a water fast, after a point, it's not even really an egoic will anymore. It kind of falls into almost this feeling of like a divine will. Like there's something else that takes over, and it's just kind of working through you. And there's definitely a piece of surrender that happens in that process. And I feel like, and I mean, you can do this in maybe other ways, but I think there's so much benefits and so much history with fasting. I think it scares a lot of people because they're so used to doing something. And one of the things I found after a while was, it was like, you really realize you don't even actually get that hungry anymore. After a while, it's not even hunger. Like there was no real hunger pains. It was more, maybe I'd get bored or I'd be like, I should be doing something right now. You kind of you realize how much time you've got to do like anything, because there's a lot of hours that go in the day of just focusing around eating. So, but then that even starts to dissolve after a little bit. So yeah, I mean, how long have you done water fasting for? What's the longest you've kind of done? And when do you think people start to get the benefits where that really kicks in?
It really kicks in after day 3. Once you're in full ketosis, once you're burning off your glycogen and your fat, and your blood is filled with the keto bodies of your own fat and your own tissue. So you're basically eating yourself, and you're breaking all that gunk down and all that fat down, which is where the toxins are. And that's why we always consistently, hey, on day 4, get those coffee enemas in. I just did one right now, actually, before the call. And it's really powerful. Just keep that waste coming out. Just allow the waste to come out. And people, and including myself, have gone through many days of doing enemas every day and doing the fasting, then go in for a colonic, and all this stuff comes out, and you're like, what's going on here? This is the magic of cleansing, is it doesn't add up. And so we're so far into the rational explanations of everything as science and scientism, and it's so overwhelmed our consciousness that we are completely off track. Because, like, where's the evidence of that? Well, you can produce whatever evidence you want. This is real science, which is you're doing a science experiment on your body. And when you see more stuff come out than went in after 3 weeks of cleansing, and you're like, where is it coming from? That truly is a science anomaly. It's one of those things where you go, how could all of that waste have come out of my body? I did enemas every day. Suddenly, and this happened to me. I'll tell you a particular story. I did enemas every day. I'm on day 54 of a cleanse. I go in and do a colonic. Nothing comes out. I'm like, great. At day 55, I go in, and all this stuff comes out, and I'm like, I couldn't comprehend it. It's one of those things that you go, the human body is a mystery. The world is filled with mystery, and this detox and cleansing, and especially the fasting, tunes us into the mystery and the magic. There's both things happening there. That's really why I do it now. I mean, I've been doing this for years and years, and the longest fast I've ever done at once is 12 days on water. But I've done many 7-day fasts, probably dozens of 7-day fasts, and 1 or 2 or 3-day fasts, dozens in my life. So I'm in a scene, and in our practice, we every year of life. So I'm 52. So I've got to do 52 days of fasting this year. That's the Essene way of life. When I get to 100, it's 100 days of fasting. Now, some years I've hit it. This year, I think I'm going to hit it. I'm going to get it. Some years I missed, but I got close. Some years I ran up right at the last second, got it. And that's our spiritual practice. And that's why I'm doing it. Like, yeah, okay, it's nice to get the rubber tire off. And, after a while, into the season, you're like, okay, the rubber tire came back. I got those 10 pounds back on. But the fast will take it right back off. And you're constantly doing that. But that's not, that might be motivation when you're beginning, like, I really want the stubborn weight off, and they will get it off. But at this stage, for me, that has nothing. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm totally doing this because you get into states of hyper learning. You get into states of super connection to your creator. You're connected to everything and to all. A lot of this week for me has been spent out there picking pine pollen and getting the catkins off this ecosystem here in Texas. It's a new ecosystem for us, but there's a loblolly pine forest surrounding us, which covers the entire south of the United States. And that tree is one of the dominant trees in North America, and we're getting its pollen in mass. And that's a superfood powder that we've got for us for the whole rest of the year. We got enough already for the whole rest of the year in just a couple weeks. And we're out there picking while fasting and doing that experience. Hardly anything beats it. I mean, I like meditating after yoga, but it doesn't beat meditating while you're picking wild food.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I love the pine pollen too. I think that's an absolutely amazing product and something we've been more involved in as well, because I think it's also going to be a very well needed product in the near future more too. It's got so many benefits, so much indigenous use behind it as well. You said something really important too, like around the science. I mean, I totally agreed. It's like science is just, I don't even know what science even is anymore. Science isn't what science originally was, because you can make science around anything and you can prove any point you want to. What I think is really important, and what you even said tied very back to our previous series on Know Thyself, it's like, we're not in the place right now where I think we need to have it make sense up here so much. People need to have experiences. You need to have a personal experience and then know it from a different place of maybe trying to understand it from the intellect, but know it in your body. And detox is such a process like that, because so many things take place in the process of detoxifying. I mean, you will find that you will work through all the different bodies of health. You'll go right from physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. You'll hit all of them. And you're not going to know that until you have that experience with it. And reminds me of something you had said at one time. I was listening to something you talked about, and you said, entertain possibilities versus believing in things. I thought that was really good. To me, that's really the scientific method. It's entertain possibilities, stay open, explore things, but don't get such a hardened belief around what you think is absolutely right or wrong, because the body is absolutely a mystery and it changes.
Well said. People get ideologically possessed. It's part of this attachment, the emotional attachment to belief systems. What's beautiful about fasting and cleansing is you start breaking those up. And another thing that I love about the cleansing process and the fasting process and this whole 3-week process that we do, which really is 31 and a half days, because you have to go out. You can't just suddenly on day 8 of the water fast, we're going to go back to bread. You're not going to go back to bread. Your body's going to go, what's going on? It would be a catastrophe. So we have to ease our way back out. But one of the things that I love about it so much is this teaching that we've gotten about meditation, of becoming the watcher of our thoughts rather than being totally emotionally involved in our thoughts. That is something that over the years with the cleansing and fasting, I see, my brain, I can see it turning on and be like, it'll start talking me out of stuff. Like, you could just eat that right now. It's not good. It's not going to be a big deal. You could just eat that. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Look at my little thoughts trying to talk me out of this right now. And so I'm starting to get that perspective that all the great meditations teachers have taught us over the years, for real. Like, I'm seeing the thoughts coming in that are trying to tell me, oh, you don't have to go 7 days. You could go 5. That'd be enough. And I just watch it and I continue continue on anyway, in spite of that. That's where the willpower is. That's where that little magic comes in. It's where the will, that kind of that Western idea of will to power, mixes with that Eastern idea of becoming the watcher in your meditation. And that fusion is the mystical union of the opposites of the East and West. And we're in that right now with the cleanse.
David, I have a question for you. Have you found a difference or a different approach even between males and females when fasting?
It's very different. For men, men try to I'm going to just overpower. I'm just going to get through this, and that's actually can be taxing. For example, you could raise your blood pressure. You might actually raise the acidity in your body because you're just so intense through willpower. I'm going to overwhelm everything. I'm just going to force this, and so we're always kind of like talking the men off the ledge, like, hey, back up. Go easy on yourself, relax. With women, it's you get this emotional stuff that comes up. That happens in men too. It happened to me. This one for sure. It was just all over the place. I was just trying to be the watcher, just going, geez, what is this? But it happens to all of us. But women tend to be a little bit more emotional, men a little bit more mental. And so we just have to breathe through it and we just get through it. But I found for sure that women are tougher. They are. When it comes to this cleansing and detox, they just hang in there longer. They're tougher. They're the ones who are pushing their partners typically through it and getting through it. And usually I did a little poll on this in this cleanse, and it was about 65 to 70% women. That's pretty normal.
Yeah, I think it ties in with that ability to bear children. When it dials in, it's like I used to find this back even when I was in clinic more, and we'd be doing like blood draws. I never saw one woman that ever passed out doing blood draws, but I saw many men, even doing a B12 shot. We put it in, and they were usually the most physically bigger, robust men that they usually happen to. They'd be like, I should probably warn you, I'm not very good with needles. And then they'd be right out as they're passing out as you're kind of catching them on their way down. But yeah, most of the women didn't have any problem with it. I would definitely say I think they've got more grit when it comes down to it with these types of processes.
It's really cool working with women in this regard, because I really think that we're coming more into a time where the feminine energy is going to predominate in the world. We're seeing kind of the last gasp at the centralized. We're going to control everything. That's kind of what's going on at the world level, and that will eventually eat itself up. I think we're probably going to go through a really tough time, at least as far as I can tell, based on the sky clock, which another name for astrology. And when you see certain patterns, like we're in a World War II pattern right now, based in the sky clock, you kind of go, okay, how much time is that looking like, because we want to make sure that we get to a healthy other side of all this cataclysmic stuff. And it looks like it's about 11 years based on the astrology. I can get into that if you want me to. But the thing that's really important about that is that we've got to endure 11 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. Okay, so what are we going to do? This is where the teachings of Taoism have come in. Americans, Canadians, even Mexicans, very good qi, very good charisma too, right? Shen, that's a Shen energy. These are Taoist concepts that come from the Shaolin monastery. But the third principle in that Shaolin way of being, the Jing, the endurance, the ability to fight on in the 15th round. Generally, North Americans, even Mexicans in US and Canada, we're generally low in Jing. Whereas you look over into societies like what's going on in China, they have very strong Jing. They live into their 80s, 90s, even 100. When we go to South America and we go into the highlands, and I hang out with those people a lot and love them, the Quechua people, they have very good Jing. That's your ability to survive, your endurance, your capability of going without, your the capability of fighting on no matter what. That's a black energy, and it's a black food energy. It's also an energy of being more wild, the Wim Hof style wildness, which is get into the waters around your house in the middle of winter, get into the elements, work with the earth, be barefoot. That's what nourishes the Jing energy. Now, on the bottom of our foot, which I think I'll probably show you just so people don't get bored, on the bottom of our foot, we have a meridian right here, this one. And that's kidney 1. It's actually right there. Kidney 1. My feet are a little bit dirty because I have been out barefoot picking pine pollen. Anyway, the kidney 1 point is the beginning meridian. Also, by the way, that point, that meridian point or acupuncture point, is also called bubbling spring. And what we're doing is we're putting a shoe, just a dirty shoe, over our bubbling spring, which is bringing and channeling the energy from the earth all the way up into our battery pack, our Jing battery pack, which is our adrenal kidney complex. And this is the thing that I'm coaching people who really want to see freedom, who really want to see a better world on. I'm saying, like, look, it's going to be a big, long one here. And we're going to have to endure. We're going to have to fight on. We're going to have to not only fight on, we're going to have to thrive in the middle of all this. That's where the Jing energy comes in. So again, black foods, black herbs, black superfoods. Yes, the color. Is black radish appropriate versus, say, a normal red radish? Well, they're both great, but the black radish is the Jing substance. The red radish is the chi substance, the firepower. That's more of like your chi, how you mobilize your immune system, you mobilize your energy moment to moment. And the black energy being most important, the red energy being second most important, then third, I'd say, is probably the green yellow. That would be for a human being, because the green and the yellow has to do with detoxification and the antidotes to most of what's going on in terms of the toxicity of our environment. And then you have the yellow, which is the rebuilding of tissue.
This is one of the things I've always really appreciated about Chinese medicine and some of more the eclectic use of plant medicines, because now we kind of talk about, oh, it's got this specific amount of nutrient, or, these types of antioxidants, and all that stuff is really interesting, and that plays a part. But they kind of take out the energetics of it. And when you would look at it from like Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, they always looked at the whole perspective of the food. So was it warming? Was it cooling? Was it more salty? Was it more bitter? And all of those then have direct relationships, like you said, to different meridians, to different organ systems. So even different emotions, right? You can pair all of that stuff up together. So I think that's really fascinating. What are some of the big black superfoods? So I guess two questions is, first, what are the best practices then to support Jing energy? Why are North Americans in general so depleted in Jing energy, maybe to begin with? And then how do we support it? And what would be the black superfoods that would tie into that?
Wonderful. Okay, so the reason why North Americans are depleted in Jing is because we have had it too easy. We've been comforted too much. We've been living in too much comfort, both food comfort, environmental comfort, where you've got these beautiful houses and everything's all warmed up, and we're not on the ground, barefoot, hands in the soil, the way we used to be and the way we could be and the way we will be coming up here shortly, I believe. When you get your hands in the soil, when you're barefoot on the earth, when you're enduring the elements, when you're out there in the winter, when you're out there in the hot summer, when you're just enduring it, rather than constantly being in an air-conditioned environment, your body has to adapt. And that adaptability is really part of the nerve force that builds Jing. Same could be said by plunging into cold water. And we love cold plunges around here. So we like to get into the ocean in the middle of the winter. In fact, I get into the ocean in California in the middle of the winter. It's not cold enough. I've got in the ocean in Iceland in the middle of the winter. I mean, it's like that. Like, you start to go, let's do this. Let's see where this really goes. So I really appreciate Wim Hof for kind of popularizing that really important concept of Jing energy, which also could be called, Paul Bragg used to call it nerve force, building nerve force. And I'm sure Wim Hof has his own colloquialisms for that phenomenon. So those practices are important. The yogis had 4 practices that they said were the practices of immortality every day. Get in front of an open fire, make an open fire. We have 4 fire pits here on this property. So we're always making open fires outside, and get that infrared heat on you, and get really in front of that fire, get squat down, get into that malasana pose, and get right in there and get your back right in there on that fire and get that infrared transfer. They had the cold water and water dip. They had the air meditation, where you take all your clothes off and you go out into the atmosphere, into the environment. Some people may or may not be able to do that depending on where you're living. And then another piece of the puzzle is getting onto the earth, the dirt, the earth itself, being barefoot, being in the earth, having your hands in the earth. Those 4 things every day. Now, to the food side of it, what are the great superfoods? I'm looking at one right now. But before I get to this one, I do want to mention that out of all the research I've ever done, my whole history in the field of nutrition, I did finally find the number one thing that, in my opinion, is going to extend life based on the research and based also on my experience, and now many years of experience with activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is the number one longevity substance that you can ingest, and it's not even nutritive. It's strictly a detoxifier. So that's telling us a lot about extending life. In animal research, it's conclusive. Activated charcoal is number one in extending animal life by far of any commonly available substance. There's no food, there's no super nutrient, there's no substance that can extend life longer in animals than charcoal. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what that could do for us. I've been on it for years and years, and now it's just we just know. It's like adding an extra filter, right? If you're going to filter your blood, that's called interstitial dialysis, by the way. When you filter your blood with activated charcoal, that's going to produce wonderful results and lower those threshold toxins. And every threshold toxin, by the way, you name it, cadmium, lead, mercury, glyphosate, they're all adhered and adsorbed by charcoal. Then the next step is that we think, well, geez, we purify our blood with charcoal. What about purifying our air with charcoals, which is what we do, right? Our air filtration. The air filtration in this house has a charcoal filter in it. The water filtration in this house has a charcoal filter in it. And so we started going, what about the earth itself? So I farm with charcoal. I've been on that one for years. That's beyond the best thing ever. I could do 5 hours just on that alone. It's called biochar, and I really recommend that people investigate that incredible discovery. And then we go to the deeper levels of what charcoal is all about. It's a black substance. It's pure Jing. I do believe that it is the secret of the ancients that never quite translated through into the books. So if you go to the yogis, they're onto it because the sadhus are always putting the ash, the sacred ash on. I'm sure that the part we didn't get was that they ate the charcoal. Definitely, I've also seen this in Taoism. If you dig into the Taoist principles, you're like, oh, there's something missing here. What's that missing thing? And it appears to be the charcoal. In Scandinavian culture, they're very, very big on it. In fact, they have a whole legend about the coal biter, the charcoal eater. That was J.R.R. Tolkien's and C.S. Lewis's club in Oxford. They're called the coal biters. And the coal biters were the charcoal eaters, and it represented the transformational process of eating charcoal. And I could do a whole thing on that in Scandinavian literature and history and in the sagas. So that always comes in number one. Can you just chew the charcoal? Yes. Can you brush your teeth with charcoal? Yes. Can you do a charcoal face mask? Absolutely. And I recommend it. Can you use charcoal for your animals? You bet. The cats and dogs, absolutely. Get them on the charcoal. And then you'll start to see the results, and you start to see that I'm personally a believer in cleanliness is near to godliness. And when you get the charcoal, you start to see that, like, oh, this cleans up the environment. It'll clean up sewers. You have odors coming up your toilets, put flush charcoal down those toilets, lock up all of those gases, and you'll never have that problem again. One of my farms is on it's a very old house. It's over 60 years old now, 62 years old. And it's got toilets that had that stuff coming up from the sewer, our septic system. We flushed the charcoal down there. It's completely gone. We wiped it out, and I could go on. But let me go to another superfood that's I always have on my desk right here, and it's a big one where I'm actually also doing coffee and Shilajit enemas. So that's Shilajit. This is one of the great gifts of the Ayurvedic civilization in terms of superfoods. And to me, it's one of the great storehouses of great energy. If you are a yogi and you're up in the Himalayas and you don't want to be carrying all this stuff, this is like a year's worth of food. I mean, you could easily carry that. And I'll just show you what that looks like for everybody who's never seen the resin before. It's a black resin. There's the black resin right there. It's really black. Look at that. I haven't even dented this thing yet. I haven't dented it. So that's Shilajit. And there are other ones. So, of the berries, we like the black colored berries, aronia berries, blackberries of all sorts and descriptions. Any berry that's darker has more anthocyanins in it, but it can be significantly more. Like, for example, between a blackberry and a blueberry, it can be 6 times more in terms of the anthocyanins. That's a significant number in terms of density of nutrition. And, when we look at, like, let's say we're mucuna turns black, one of the great super herbs of the world, the mucuna bean, which is a super brain nutrient and the best medicine we know of currently against Parkinson's. I could go on, but maybe I should take a break for a second and let you guys chime in.
I'm really glad you jumped on activated charcoal because we've been using a lot of activated charcoal too. And, when we were back in Canada, I actually found it not so easy to find activated charcoal so much. We've been in Mexico and you can find bags of it everywhere. It's like coconut charcoals everywhere. And I think most of them are usually a wood or a coconut charcoal, but it definitely jumps into a couple of questions, sort of facts and myths around activated charcoal. So maybe first, difference between just charcoal and activated charcoal. And one of the concerns that I know comes up a lot of times is like, oh, careful, if you take too much charcoal, you're going to absorb up all of your nutrients, you're going to deplete yourself, and can't take it with supplements or around medication, stuff like that, because it'll bind up everything. What are your thoughts on those?
Okay, first off is in Canada, you can get the white charcoal, which is the weakest one. And then you go to the normal charcoal, say a birch or willow charcoal, which is really a tonic substance, meaning that you could take that every day, all day long with your food, without your food, and it's a tonic. And it's a really wonderful thing for people who have very sensitive digestion. Whereas activated charcoal is much more aggressive, much stronger, but not appropriate for daily use for people who have really sensitive digestion. It's just too aggressive. Is there any evidence in the scientific literature that charcoal binds any healthy nutrients? And the answer is a shocking one. There is no evidence. There's never been any evidence that charcoal interferes with healthy digestion of nutrients, protein, fats, and oils, carbohydrates, minerals, calcium, vitamin C, any of it. In fact, you can test that out for yourself. I do that with niacin. So I take charcoal and niacin together, and it still works just like it always does. And that kind of proves to you like, whoa, it's still working. I normally take charcoal separate from everything else. It can adhere itself to certain secondary alkaloids that are in substances. For example, I really like Schizandra berry. That's one of my favorite super herbs of all time. It's arguably number one in Taoism in terms of the best herbs in Chinese medicine. But the secondary alkaloids are something I really want the benefit of. These are the medicinal alkaloids, medicinal saponins, the medicinal glycosides, things of that nature. And so I won't take charcoal when I take those kinds of medicinal herbs. Generally, though, the main reason why I'm taking it separately from everything else is because I want that interstitial dialysis. I want that charcoal to get all the way into my small intestine with nothing else interfering so that it can filter off my blood. That's the main reason. So generally, first thing in the morning, I get up, I take a bunch of charcoal, drink a bunch of water, usually over a liter of water with the charcoal, even a little bit of sea salt in there, and then boom, I'm ready to fire into the day. And that's how I begin almost every day, and that's a really wonderful practice. If you ever have any digestive problem at all, all of a sudden you're like, oh, something's wrong, I ate the wrong thing, bad bacteria, food poisoning, immediately take 8 to 10 500 milligram capsules of charcoal, and it will neutralize it almost instantaneously. That dosage, by the way, is a little bit high for most people daily. I'm a heavy user of charcoal, and I might do 2,000 to 2,500 milligrams a day. Normally, I recommend for new people 500 milligrams a day just to get started, because it's not really about the amount, it's about the consistency. Because what you're really doing is, with that extra charcoal in your system, is you're taking the burden off your liver, your spleen, and your kidneys, which are the filtration organs, and you're allowing the charcoal to do some of that filtering. And this is very important and very helpful for people who are headed into kidney trouble or even dialysis.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating one, because it's like you can definitely use it. I think it's a first aid one everybody should have in there, especially if you've got kids and stuff too, because if your kids ever accidentally took something that you weren't too sure, or if they got into a medication or something like that, that's definitely a good one to get into them to try and bind stuff up. So it has a way of sort of binding some of the man-made stuff, but it doesn't seem to really bind up and affect a lot of the natural nutrients. I mean, and I don't even really understand exactly why.
Nobody does. Nobody knows. I've dug all the way into this.
Yeah.
I wrote an entire book on this subject that nobody actually knows. And that just tells us about everything in this world. Nobody really knows. It's all theories. It's all guesses. And so this trust the science nonsense is totally anti-science, because the science is constantly changing as we get more information. And there's different theories like pi stacking or van der Waals forces as to how the charcoal is adhering to certain, like, plastics and glyphosate and things of that nature, plasticizers like BPA, but doesn't affect calcium or vitamin C. I mean, how does it know? And so that's the thing about the electrochemical magic of charcoal. So let me just divert into this. This is a really cool discovery, and I like to bring it up. Edison did not invent the light bulb. That's a total myth. Anybody can look that up. He invented the cotton filament light bulb, and he bought the patents for the original light bulb, where the original filament was charcoal. Now, if you start to look at this closer, you start to look at a fire totally differently. I love innocent perception and just how learning brings us deeper into innocent perception. There's a whole electrical phenomenon going on in a fire. It's not just like the fire's burning the wood down. There's an electrical phenomenon. If you take, like, I have a wool poncho that I like to have with me when I'm sitting by the fire, and if I take that wool poncho close to that fire, it will suddenly get hit with static electricity. That glowing coal that you see in the bottom of that fire, that glowing charcoal, that's an electrical phenomenon, like the light bulb. And once you see that, you can't unsee that. You start going, oh, what's going on with this? Whoa, the charcoal's lit up electrically. That's what's going on. And what a discovery that is. Just that you'd think, oh, it's just a fire, but there's always something deeper. I love the way Rudolf Steiner said this. He said that nothing is explained superficially. Nothing in this world can be explained superficially. Coming back to the point on charcoal and where it leads from there, is that it's a consistent tonic that can help you to extend life, because it's consistently bringing those toxins down. So we never cross a threshold. If you want to keep your detox going through the months where you're just kind of getting back to normal after the fasting and cleansing, the charcoal is kind of like your go-to. That's your backup, and that's what I have every day as backup in my diet. And then when I get back into the cleansing again, I've never really gotten too intoxicated with anything that I ate, or if I ate too late or didn't digest properly, etc.
David, is this something that would be abrasive for the kids to have daily, or would that be easily incorporated into their daily intake as well?
That's such a great question. Charcoal is very important for children. It's very important for animals and pets. And it's actually the most antitoxic substance we know of. So a friend of mine had a preemie baby, and guess what was in the formula for the preemie baby? Charcoal. It's safe for all ages at all levels, safe during pregnancy. It's the most antitoxic substance ever discovered. And that to me makes it like we got to push it to the front of the line. But it's not just that, it's the research on it's crazy. Like extending the lifespan in animals, 22%, 21%, 28%, 32%, 33%, 40%, 43%. That's common in animal research. If you could find me any other single food, nutrient, super herb, anything that extends life like that, please show it to me, because it doesn't exist in any scientific literature I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think if you could combine activated charcoal and then with another superfood, I'd say that ties in with this would be something like carbon 60, right? Carbon 60 has also got some pretty good longevity animal studies, I think, with rats too. So those things, and they kind of similar sort of idea.
Together.
Right? Yeah.
C60 is a subset of charcoal. It's always found in charcoal. It's created by, in nature, you would find C60 where a tree got hit by lightning. So tree lightning creates a different type of charcoal than just burning the charcoal in a fire. And it generally creates more curved charcoal types of structures. We call those fullerenes. And the flat kind of charcoal layers that you see, the layers of the wood, that's a different type of charcoal. That's more of the common, but there's less than 1% of all charcoal contains fullerenes, and about 0.1% of that is the carbon 60. So you are getting some of it. Though strangely, the way I got into this charcoal and doing this kind of dosage of charcoal was from the C60. I was thinking one day, I was taking the C60 because a good friend of mine, she was in the she trained professional athletes actually in Calgary, and she was a professional trainer. She's one of those people you get into a workout with, and she does like, okay, we're doing 10 sets, then 9 and 8, and then all the way up, and then all the way back down again. Right? She doesn't just do one, you're doing both all the way. She's that kind of trainer. So she's kicking your butt. And she had one of her athletes break a 10-year plateau. She had other athletes just have these extraordinary experiences with the C60. I thought, geez, I'll just try it. I didn't know really what it was. And then eventually I got into the longevity research on it. Was like, what the heck is this stuff? Now I've been on that since 2015. So I've been talking to all the best scientists in the world on this subject. And a really good one lives near me here, actually, and we're going to be getting together again to discuss fullerenes. But then suddenly it hit me. I was like, this stuff's a subset of charcoal. I wonder what the research on charcoal and longevity is. And that blew the lid right off. C60 is an exotic compound. Sure, you can get off the internet. We love the C60 products that are out there. I love the ones that we make. We make like 5 different ones actually, and it's just a love and a passion. But if things break down and the grid breaks down and we can't get stuff, charcoal's always there for every human being, and it's something to be aware of.
I love it. Our kids have been taking charcoal too since we've been out here, and we've done that back and forth with them. And for people that haven't taken charcoal before, they always think it's really cool that when their poop actually becomes really black after they start taking it. So just be aware that you probably don't have a bleed going on or something. But but yeah, I remember my 4-year-old when she first was, she's like,
calling us from the bathroom.
Like, come and look. Yeah, pretty fascinating. One question, what is the difference then between things like charcoal, bentonite clay, and zeolite? Those often get kind of thrown in together. So what is your perspective on the differences, benefits, pros, cons, when you'd use one versus the other?
Merck Pharmaceuticals, of all things, used to manufacture a tablet that was 80% charcoal and 20% clay. And they sold that for 100 years. Just a couple of years ago, I think it was 2018, actually, they stopped selling it. They took it off of their catalog. So we've now seen with things like ivermectin, there's certain things in the pharmaceutical pharmacopoeia that actually are really interesting and good and aren't normal pharmaceuticals. And that charcoal and that combination was a really interesting one on the market for 100 years. And that kind of told me something. I was like, oh, interesting. 80% charcoal, 20% clay. And this is a thing that I kind of get into off and on. Every now and then I get into the clays, and every now and then I get into the zeolites. I don't do them every day like I do charcoal. That's more of a tonic thing for me. I want to be more consistent with that. But am I against clay and zeolite? Not at all. I think they're great, and I add them in when I feel like it, when it feels like the right moment. And it's really wonderful when you do all those 3 things together. When you do the charcoal, the clay, and the zeolite all together, that's a whole nother thing. And I usually do those combinations during a cleanse because normally I'm too busy. I got too many other things I'm doing, and I don't really have time to okay, I'm getting the clay in this and all sorted out. But when you're cleansing and detoxing, you have a little bit extra time, actually a lot of extra time, and then you can get it in.
When you are doing your detoxification process, so when people go through it, any specific strategies for people that are having particularly a hard time with some of the really difficult things to detox from? So whether that's like, coffee or caffeine or sugar, or, I even start to throw in there like spike protein at this point, I think. So what are some strategies for people that have a harder time with that, where maybe they wean into it, or what do you find?
We like to get them started like a month early with the Parasite formulas. So I'm doing, actually, I think I've got them all here because I've just been doing them. Now that I'm on the water fast, I'm not doing them because, with the water, I want it just to be real clean and just that. I think I've got one more. Where's that other one here? Let's see if I got it. Oh, here it is. Okay, cool. So I'll show you some of the ones that we're doing. This is my product, Remove Unwanted Guests. And it's basically a black walnut, clove, wormwood, chunka piedra formula with enzymes. There's a similar product that my friend Dr. Group puts out, which is Paratrex. This is like epizote and diatomaceous earth and neem, and a little bit different. He also has a little bit of cloves and black walnut in there as well, and a few other things. So a little bit different. So those are nice and complementary to each other. So I'll take, like, leading up to the cleanse a month before, I'll take like 2 of each of those every day with my food. And then mycozil is more for the candida. So this is Paudiarco essentially, and Yatoba, which are really good antifungals. So if you really want to get that fungus down, to the Paudiarco is really good against the candida. This is just a formula that has that. This is very rich in shikimate. So this is good for spike protein. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, because I work a lot with Dr. Group over here in Houston, and this product, he's like, check this out. And so he put this in my hand, and I really liked it. And it has that flavor that fennel seed has, that's almost like a licorice, right? That's the shikimate, which is very important for neutralizing spike protein. Shikimate, by the way, is also very important for children, very important for children's nutrition. And the reason why is because it's the precursor to all aromatic compounds, all the odors and things that we smell, or all the things that are aromatic in our body. And it's the precursor to all color pigments in nature, in all of nature. And by the way, all aromatic compounds in all of nature originate in shikimate. It's the origin of 3 amino acids: phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan. So that's why I put that one in there. And it's, by the way, very important for developmentally disabled children as well, because that's one of the deficiencies that's going on, is they don't have enough shikimate and they need more to produce certain amino acids. Then another one that we've been doing is this is Microbe Labs, I think, or Microbe Formulas, Mimosa pudica seed. And that's the sensitive plant. You guys probably see that down there in Mexico. That plant, you touch it and it reacts to you. This is the seed of that, a very good dewormer. Between these 4 right here, leading a month up into the cleanse, and then the first week, and then the second week, pretty soon something's going to come out. Usually it takes about a week, and then people will get the worms out and they start going, what's going on? And then we'll stay on it. And then eventually, if it's really bad, we keep them on it for 100 days. That's number 1 for that, in terms of an addendum to like help, people who've never done this before to really bring things down. Because if you got candida, you're going to be craving sugar. If you got worms, you're going to be craving protein. It's going to be super intense on the willpower to overcome that.
Yeah. I like that you brought up shikimate too, because that's been such a big topic over the last while. Are the ones that you've noticed that come up as being the highest, being able to access shikimate, I think like fennel, star of anise, and then pine? I think those are the big ones, aren't they? Is there anything else that you've come across?
Schizandra.
Berries. Okay.
It's every time something happens in this world, like the spike protein thing or something else, or anything that comes along, as soon as I dig into Schizandra, I'm like, it's there. It's got it. It's like xylitol. Schizandra got it. It's just anything. It's amazing. Schizandra comes up again and again and again as being one of the great herbs of the world and one of the great detoxification substances. And when it dries, it's red-black. It's a red berry, but when it dries, it's red-black. And so it has a long history of being considered a Jing substance, an endurance substance, a survival substance in Taoism.
Right. And probably with the red, it's got the chi aspect of it as well.
So it's got both.
Perfect blend of the two of them. I'd love to jump into a little bit around sort of food perspective. When you start, where do you start when people are going to do a detox? Where do you start with them? Just basics. So they haven't done much of anything before. From a food perspective, what do you like to fine tune for them? Where do you look at with foods?
First thing we do is we try to get them into the cleanse about a month before we start. We try to get them organic. That's the first step. Let's get them organic. Not that organic's perfect, but definitely the conventionally grown food is imperfect. Then we go to, we just wean them down to vegan diet, essentially, because we just want to get all the variables out. As soon as somebody's having a ham or chicken or turkey or something, there's so many variables that are coming in. So we wean them down to that. Also, we're preparing them for what's likely to come in the future, which is shortages of chicken or turkey or things that people are used to eating. So we've got to start to learn how to survive without those things. And that's a big part of the lessons of the early part of the cleanse, is like, you're going to survive this week without meat. You're going to make it. You're going to survive without cheese. You're going to make it. You're going to survive without eggs. You're going to make it. And then we get them into the second week, and usually people are like, okay, I think I'm going to make it now. And then we get them on the smoothies and the liquid diet, and they start having fun with it. They really appreciate that. And then boom, then third week into the water. So that's how we approach it.
Awesome. And just because you brought that up, I think a good thing to kind of bring some awareness to it as well. When you move towards vegan diet, and say it's like a prolonged one, any of the things that you found work best for just balancing out any potential deficiencies around stuff? I think some of the ones people wonder about are things like B12. Do you need to supplement with B12 during it? I would say one of the other ones that can happen, which would not just be from a vegan diet, I'd say anybody's diet, unless they're being aware of what they're doing, but sort of like a omega-3/6 ratio or something along those lines. What do you find from that perspective that maybe people can add in to their diet to sort of bolster it up a little bit on where there might be some chinks? Sometimes even iron, if they're not very good with absorbing and breaking it down from a non-heme iron source.
Okay, good. So let's go to, there's two interesting ones that come up in my mind. And one of them is a product that my cousin developed that I think he nailed it, which is the Symbiotica Synergy B12, which is the squirt B12. That's just an incredible product. They actually had to lower the B12 on the product because their B12 was going up too high. They were getting like 800, 1,000, 1,200 B12. These are like vegans. And so that product really has been an interesting one. It's so easy to use. So it's in that product, he's got B6, B9, and he's got B12, and he's got the right B9. You know how there's problems with it, with the B9 that's out there. And then the other product that he developed, which I had worked on for years and years and years and just never got it right, and he finally put it into a squirt bottle, and that's the way to do it, is the algae oil, the DHA. So his product's got, it's their product called The Omega. So Synergy B12 and The Omega are those two products from Symbiotica. And the Omega has the really wonderful DHA and EPA from plant sources. It all originates in plants anyway. I mean, that's where the fish get it from. They eat the algae. The algae is really the wizard that is using chlorophyll to convert energy and then develops long chain omega-3 fatty acids like DHA right there in the plant, in the algae, the plankton in the ocean. That's the real magic. So that's why we target that as the first source. Beyond that, I would say with heme iron and like non-heme iron, and what are we going to do about that? My recommendation, and we do this pretty much every day, unless we're doing the cleanse and then we get people off the stimulants, but the chocolate or the cacao and spirulina combination is a crazy iron source. I mean, you know, just cacao itself, the cacao beans, I have some here recently from the Big Island. There's cacao. And let's look at the color of cacao, by the way. Let's just have a look at this just to test this out. See if I can break one of these open. I'm not going to bite into it because, okay, let's see. Let's see what we got here. That one wasn't, it's just kind of, let's see. You can see right there. You can see it's purple, black, yeah, right, and brown. Purple, black, and brown. Those colors, what are they? Purple is digestive system. Brown is elimination, it's a laxative. And then black, that's Jing. So, and that's chocolate. That's nails it all the way. At any rate, you've got 5 times as much iron in cacao beans like this as you'd find in a steak. You combine that with a spirulina in a smoothie, and I've had people who bled for like 50 days straight who were having problems, menstrual problems, and did not drop into a critical problem with iron on that combination. So it works.
Nice. I just love hearing the different options because a lot of times people aren't aware of it. And the more you kind of hear it, the more you can try them out and then periodically get your blood work checked and see where you are, right? Again, and then you kind of know firsthand what's working for you and how it's making you feel. Oh, you were saying something I wanted to jump on there. It'll come back to me in a sec. Acid alkaline.
Was it about the plankton? The plankton stuff, algae?
Right, yeah, about the algae. So one of the things I think is neat is I would find, because I think they're doing such a better job with it now. I think originally I wasn't so keen early on with some of the algae ones because I'd find that they actually had more DPA and not so much DHA and EPA. So then I didn't know what was actually going to get converted over. So it was hard to know as like a comparison to studies from fish oil, because fish oil had been so well sort of documented in a lot of ways. But now I'm seeing like a lot of the algae oils, or well, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but some of the really good quality algae oils are now like packed with DHA, right? And not DPA, but it's actually DHA. So they're getting like the full bang for your buck with it. So
I really like DHA. In terms of the omega-3s, there's really 3 omega-3s that are essential. DHA I would put as the number 1. That is the most important. It's one of the things that makes us distinctly human. It's a very important brain and eye nutrient, maybe the most important. If I had to like strip away all nutrients, be like, okay, we're on water, sea salt, lemon, and charcoal. What nutrient will we have from nature? I would probably say DHA if I had to name something. And I do want to just flesh that out a little bit more too, because like a product like Symbiotica's product has really good DHA and EPA, both from marine sources, but from algae sources or plankton sources. They also are, have the ALA as well, but I would recommend, and we usually do this in both weeks of the detox, the first and second week, we just try to get people to just get into get a bottle of hemp seed oil. And yeah, you could do your DHA and EPA, but make sure you get that bottle of hemp seed oil so you're really actually getting that ALA, because that's another one that we don't really ever get enough on. I've been through, by the way, that people were like, I'm against oil, don't do oil, and then it got into real trouble 20 years later or 15 years later or 5 years later or 5 weeks later. The reason why we have oil is because we're not all the same, and some people really need that expressed oil to get the omega-3 to the cell site.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I've experienced the same thing myself. And just seeing with patients, I've had some too where hardcore against any oils, like all oils are bad, they're all gonna oxidize and they're all gonna be a problem. But everybody's different. And I think if there's one lesson to take is like everybody is individual and you need to try it out. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Like listen to it. If it resonates, give it a try and then run it through yourself and see what you notice. But yeah, I think that's great. And I found for some people too, you need to have it in a certain concentrated form for that person to actually get what they're needing. And then I don't see it change sometimes even in blood levels until they've done that. So then it's nice to see they're feeling better. And I can see, yeah, that makes sense. That worked. Like that got your ratios back into a good zone.
Awesome. And I'm so glad to get that message out. I was on a call yesterday with a bunch of doctors and they were that kind of the anti-oil doctors. And I was like, oh God, I've been through the moms who were like, the husband went to the event with the anti-oil guys. Are you guys still there? There you are. They went to the event with the anti-oil guys and all of a sudden they came back like, kids are not having oil. We're not having oil. We're getting rid of oil. And that's very dangerous for children, very dangerous because they're still developing. This is where things like veganism doesn't really work for, can work when you're already developed for long periods of time. If that's what your choice is and that's what makes you feel good. It's definitely not for everybody, but it's definitely not for children because they need things like cholesterol. They need ghee. They need cheese. They need eggs. They need those substances to create a healthy environment, to create healthy teeth, for example. I mean, that's really, after all the years of the Weston Price stuff and mixing that with real life experience of vegetarians and vegans, those three foods come up for me: ghee, cheese, and eggs.
Yeah, I know. I love this conversation too, because I think that, and also I really appreciate that point of view because there's no sort of strong adherence to one thing as being right or wrong. And I think that's something we all got to like really throw out the window in a lot of ways and just keep coming back to experimenting with it and seeing how it feels in our bodies. And also like, I would have some people that had such strong ideas of, I so want this to work. Like, I've really built my identity wrapped around this diet or this sort of belief system, but their bodies meanwhile is breaking down, and they just might need to do something different. And don't be surprised if that then changes again at another point in time when you go through maybe menopause or something else. All of a sudden, again, you're going to get cravings for something different, or your body's going to need different types of nutrients. So just be flexible with it and ultimately see what's going to work.
I love that what you're saying is just, it's based on experience. I can hear it, right? And we know that from experience, all these years of experience, you finally do learn that. Like, I love what Rudolf Steiner said on this. He said, there are as many diets as there are human beings on earth. That's the truth. That's the real truth. And it's where you're living, your personality, your soul's journey, your ethnic background. There's so many factors involved in it that you can't say that this is right for everybody. So what we try to do is we put all the choices out there. We try to get into the parameters. Like, for example, reishi mushroom is one of my favorite mushrooms. And we found some yesterday, actually on our picking yesterday. It was awesome. There was this log washed up in the river and we got into the middle of the river and I was like, that looks like something. And I pulled it off and it was a reishi. And I was like, oh my God. But reishi, being the most wonderful thing ever, is not for everybody. One of my best friends is allergic to it. That's a 1 in 1,000, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way you're going to know is when I think trusting what you're kind of being naturally drawn to. I think that's always a good sign. If you're finding something really interesting and you're really curious about it, it's like, give it a try, experiment with it, and then run it through and see how that goes. And then let yourself be the guide. So, but this is all great because it's important to have all the information out there so people can kind of listen to it, learn things about it, and then just see what resonates and then start to try it. Run through some of these different detoxes, like check out your program. And also you've got years of experience and you can kind of fine tune it for people and guide them a little bit better through the process. If you're new to it, it definitely helps to have someone to kind of guide you through it because, detox isn't just like drop everything. I mean, you can hit a pretty hard wall sometimes if you've got a lot of stuff to detox, hard and fast isn't always the way to do it. You kind of have to work into it a little bit, or you can, a lot of times people don't realize that when you're detoxifying, and you look at the stages in liver detox, you're actually initially, first phase, you're making things even more sort of problematic or more dangerous before they run through phase 2, which then makes them water soluble so you can actually dump them. But if you're not supporting those phases appropriately, you could be making yourself even worse off.
Well said. And that's why we talk about detox as a lifestyle. Fasting is a lifestyle. Cleansing is a lifestyle. Liquid diet's a lifestyle. And we just go through these phases where, okay, we're back to this time of the year again. It's change of seasons. We're getting back on our horse. We're going to do the week of 1 meal a day, and then we're going to pare our calories down, and we're going to do parasite cleansing, and then we're going to do a liquid diet. We're going to bring our calories down. We're going to get into ketosis. We're going into the water fast. And we just do it consistently, and we just take people through it. Now, at this stage, I've got people, I think there's one gal actually living in Playa del Carmen. She's been through 8 or 9 or 10 of my cleanses at this point, and it's really interesting to see her. She looks like a different person. I mean, she's totally glowing. She's in like the peak of vitality, and it didn't happen on the first one. And I remember the complaints of like, this and that, and this, it's not working. And this, I was like, stay with it, hang in there. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. Hang in there. And now it's just like, whoa, now she's leading her own detoxes and retreats, that's what we need, right? We're trying to create a movement so it becomes normalized in our culture, which it eventually will be.
What if, David, I've heard a lot of people say, well, what do we have the liver for? And what do we have the intestines for? Don't we have organs within our body that naturally detox within and for us anyway? What would you say to that?
We call those people detox deniers. So what we do with them is we like say, hey, just entertain it, just for fun, just go through 5 days. Usually it's on day 4 or 5 and they go, oh my God, I'm feeling so much better. Oh my God, I can't believe what came out of me. Or, so we just put them through the cleanse is actually what we do with people like that. And then they find out what the truth is. So how many times have we been on a trip, like a family trip, and we got behind 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bowel movements and never caught up? How many times do we show up on a trip and we're constipated, and God knows how far back we got? And this is a chance to catch up. How many times were we so busy and so on the run that we just chowed that food down and didn't pay attention to a single bite? This is a chance to catch up. So all we're doing is we're just getting back to normal. Let's just bring it back to where we were before by catching up, so that we're not behind on bowel movements, and that we're all not only caught up, but we're emptied out completely. So it's like a fresh start. So the intestines go, thank you. And the liver goes, I don't have to deal with all this crisis today and yesterday and the day before that. And I finally have a break. And so the liver can almost instantly rejuvenate itself. That's one of the things we've discovered. I spent a day talking with Dr. Group the other day about the liver and its role in blood pressure, high blood pressure, and bringing the liver toxins down so that the blood pressure goes down. That's a big one. And that's what we work on with the cleanse, is just bringing that stress down, bringing the liver's load down. And it does take some time because it's phase 1 and 2. And by the way, Schizandra is both a phase 1 and phase 2 detoxifier. What do you know?
No, absolutely a super herb, I think, all around.
Well, I'm thinking kids, as far as you mentioned that information about kids, and that was really fascinating. Can you speak a little bit more around what you'd recommend for kids to consume and not to consume at their age? Like, sure, get into the sugars for people who are just, realizing this for the first time, but I just love to hear you speak on what recommendations you have for kids specifically.
I really like berries for kids. I think that's one of the most important foods for children. I like eggs, cheese, and ghee for children. I think it's another amazing important category for the building blocks. I like getting the fat-soluble carotenoids out in soups, for example. So one of the things that kids really love is they love their little broths and soups, and I loved that when I was a kid. And, they like dipping things in it. So I would really recommend getting into non-gluten breads and some of the interesting breads from, for example, chia breads and hemp seed breads. And there's just so many cool things that are out there now. And that's what you dip in your soup. Other than what we got some kind of crazy GMO wheat. I mean, it wasn't GMO back then, but it was not the best ever. At any rate, the power of blending oils with a little bit of heat with your vegetables draws out the carotenoids that back and are behind all of the chlorophyll in that substance. So this is really interesting. It's a way of actually taking beta carotene and really turning it into something that's immunological, or in particular lycopene. Lycopene can become if you, let's say you make a tomato basil soup. I used to do that on TV a lot, and I do that in a NutriBullet. And the NutriBullet RX, you could make that in 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Just blend the thing, it would just heat up through the molecules, and you'd have an instant soup, and the whole thing would be universally hot all the way throughout. It was really nice. And one of the things that would happen is when you get that level of so you're going to have some oil in there. It's going to be olive oil and a little bit of heat that draws out the carotenoids that back the chlorophyll. So things like xanthophylls and lycopene and beta carotene and lutein. And then that makes that highly bioavailable to the blood. So that's going to be for brain development. It's going to be for eye development. It's going to also be for all cellular defense, because those carotenoids actually get into the membrane of every cell in our body. We can certainly live without them. We won't be as healthy, but it's better to have them there. But if we just say, like, just with juicing, I love just juicing, right? Juicing vegetables. A lot of those carotenoids don't get absorbed because the oil isn't there to draw them out and make them soluble into the blood. And that's from blood research, by the way. That's how I arrived at that. I was like, whoa, this is blood research. It's not just how much antioxidants is in the carrot or the tomato. It's how much is being absorbed into your blood by different mechanisms of ingesting it. And with kids, we want to make those carotenoids orally available. Kids need a wide variety of food, and they also need salt. And that's an important thing too, is we're so anti-salt. It's gotten to a point of cuckoo. I mean, it's water and salt's the basis of life, period. And I know Morton's iodized salt that comes from a factory in Chicago is not the type of salt we're talking about. And we're not talking about some, salt that's been kiln dried and all those trace 15 minerals have been shipped off to labs. Nope. We're talking about original sea salt that comes from the ocean. In particular, if you can't get that, you want to get something from a dry lake bed, maybe real salt from Utah, or you want to get maybe a Himalayan salt or something like that. But that's not quite as good as sea salt. Sea salt is the best for kids, and it's the most bioavailable, and it's very important for development because it's the #1 source of minerals. That's key. I would also recommend for kids that you get in the silica and the magnesium, and those are things that can drop off in domesticated diets. So for example, magnesium, sure, they're going to get that from the green foods, and if you can get enough into them, but I like to get at least maybe, once the kid gets to be 5 or 6, get them on a really broad spectrum magnesium supplement for bone growth, right? Because that's going to create that next generation of teeth, that when they become 7, that whole new teeth set comes in. That's from their own nutrition. We need the magnesium for that. Another one that's in that boat is silica, which is what you get from the skins of cucumbers, the skins of the squash, the skins of bell peppers, the skins of what's another one? It's what creates the sheen on things. Did I say tomato? I don't know. Anyway, it's the skin of those that really has that silica. Now, if you're going, well, where else what do you get it? You can get some of that from oat straw. You can get some of that from hemp leaf. You can get that from horsetail. Horsetail is #1. And that way you get some of that going, that silica. It's a thing, if you're in the wild environment, you're eating wild food, and the kids eating wild food, in like a tribal way of life, Western prey style, they'll get that. But if they're not getting that kind of diet, it's more of a domesticated diet, we need to go the extra mile and make sure we get that in there. Let's get the horsetail in there. Let's get the hemp leaf in there. Let's get the oat straw in there. And let's not skin all our vegetables, because that silica is very important also for tissue development, vein and artery development, but also for bones.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
you're welcome. And by the way, of course, the B12 and the DHA and the things we've mentioned already.
Yeah.
And the charcoal.
Yeah, I mean, charcoal's been a fairly new one we've done with our kids over probably the last 5 or 6 months, I guess, since we started doing a lot more of it ourselves too. But it's like such an easy one. We'll do a smoothie up and we'll just put a bunch of charcoal in it. So now they actually ask for the black smoothie. It's like they want the black smoothie. They don't want it if it's not black. So it's so like it's not as cool if it's not black now. They're missing something. So nice, David. Anything else that we missed that you think is really important? And then I want to come back and I want to talk a little bit about just the 11/11 Iceland movie and some of the other things that you've done that I think is just really cool stuff that you got going on. But maybe final comments that you've got, top 3 points that you think for the audience would be most beneficial.
Well, you had talked about as far as the stars and the cosmic news. What did you call it? I wanted to see if you can dive into that a little bit for us.
we call that the sky clock, and over the years, just being around a lot of astrologers and really studying the sky clock and the patterns of history and certain phenomenon that have repeated throughout history, you can kind of see that, like, hey, when Pluto is going to go into anaretic degrees of Capricorn, which means like the 28th degree, 29th degree of Capricorn, early in 2023, that usually means trouble. That means political trouble, a lot of turmoil, that kind of stuff. What we're dealing with in terms of the World War II pattern, so we've got Pluto going to anaretic degrees, and then we've got the Uranus in Taurus moving into Uranus in Gemini. That's the World War II pattern. Neptune in Pisces, which is like the fake news stuff, and that's all the propaganda of the 1930s and what we're dealing with right now, moves Neptune into Aries. And so Neptune Pisces moves to Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Taurus moves to Uranus in Gemini. That's the World War II pattern. That's the 1933 up to 1946, and then it was over. And so that comes for us actually at the end of 2032 and the beginning of 2033. That's when that World War II pattern will come to a close. And so if you feel into what's going on, you can see that they've got a drawn out plan of one catastrophe after another and after another to try to break down society and push in their new world order. And with that new world order is basically a slave system with a one world government where everybody's we call them slave coins, which are the centralized digital currency, instead of Bitcoin or things like that, which are decentralized. So there's nobody who can print more of it. There's no one who can just say, well, we're just, you used our coin for something we don't like. We're just going to erase your transaction. You're not getting it, because that's what they want. So that kind of thing is it's all going to happen over the next 11 years. Their attempt to basically rule the world through the one world system. And then we will have some breathing moment. The next 25 years, according to the best astrologers that I know, maybe next 24, we've already gone through a year or two of it, maybe 23, it's going to be some of the toughest times for humanity ever in all of history based on the astrology. So I do want to point that out. And that means we're we're born into that. And that means it's part of our karma. So we better accept that. Now, I do know that if it gets, let's just do it this way. So I'm a drummer. I like doing my little drum tricks and all that little stuff. But one of the things that I like to show people is that everything's in balance. There's a dynamic equilibrium of the world, right? So let's say all that evil and all that stuff's here, and we're over here, right, with the good. Well, look what's going to happen to us is all that evil just pushes down. Look what happens to us, right? We're exalted. We get lifted up. And so if you're on the right side of history, you're going to be lifted up. If you care about human rights and you support human rights and you care about other people and all of those things that we do, we will be lifted up. So this could actually be for us, strangely, even though it'll be rough for others, who are still caught up in the matrix, could be the best time ever in human history for liberty. In the sense that, like, now we know what evil is, now we know what good is. Now we know what bad nutrition is, now we know what good nutrition is. Now we know what intoxication looks like, now we know what detoxification can do for us. All of that stuff is going to come alive here for us. So in a lot of ways, yes, it's going to be terrible in certain contexts, in certain places, maybe the worst it's ever been. But in other places, it will definitely be the best it's ever been, because everything's in balance. And so we just got to find that track and ride it.
Yeah. I mean, you can even see that over the last couple of years, even. I mean, it's been incredibly challenging in a lot of ways, but in other ways, it's been incredibly liberating for a lot of people too. So, or even centering, it's sort of made certain things clearer or more foggy, I think, for a lot of people too. So like you're saying, kind of depends on where
those of us, your perspective. And I think those of us who have, I wanted to talk about this, so we'll bring it in right now. Those of us who have the right attitude, we'll find the aptitude to adapt. We'll find it. So attitude determines, and has always determined all our life, aptitude. And if we just keep the right attitude about things, that's the key. That's the key teaching. That's another Rudolf Steiner thing, is he said, in this time that we're going through right now, which he predicted 100 years before, he said, you just have to maintain the right attitude and guide your way through it. It's going to be a tough time for humankind. But when we come out of this, it will be much, much better. I mean, we will actually know real liberty. We thought we had liberty. We thought we had freedom before, but now we see that those things that we had paid for were actually stolen and used by toxic governments and stuff like that, and used in wars and used to kill people and ruin lives. And we don't want that anymore. And when we have the systems after this, those systems will be improved in that way. So this is kind of a necessary tough moment that we're going through, but I have really strong feelings that there will be opportunities in this that will be some of the greatest ever seen by humankind.
Yeah.
Awesome. Actually, following this series, we're going to do one on the illusion of free choice. And we'd love to have you back for that one too, to talk a little bit more about, maybe you can even touch on this here because we're talking about detox, the place of, technology and how we would all benefit from actually taking a step back or limiting the amount of technology we expose ourselves to, including television, screens, movies, all of that.
I would love to do that. That's a favorite subject of mine. One of my favorite hobbies is reading. You can see all those books over there. And eventually, and that's just a little sampling of my overall library. And one of my favorite subjects is, what is the right role of technology? So I'd love to talk about that, both from the Steiner perspective, Victor Schauberger's perspective, Charles Fort's perspective, my own perspective, and some of the great philosophers throughout history.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that was one that we've talked about for a long time, and just tie into the different ideas, because a lot of times, we think we're making choices based on our own free will, but what we might not understand is all of these sort of background ways that have really kind of just kept us on a certain path. And, you think you're making your own free choices, but it's maybe a little bit more convoluted than that. So we thought that would be a fun one to just sort of bring awareness to, because if people then have an awareness, then you can actually step a little closer into making your own conscious choices, right? And,
I actually feel like awareness is freedom. That's really what it's about. The more awareness you have, then you have more choices. As soon as they go, oh, these are your only choices, that's not freedom. So we're always trying to create more choices, and that's the whole point.
Oh, that's been so so obvious over these past 2 years. I mean, to me, the big thing we talked about was just informed consent. And it's like, you can't have informed consent if you don't have all the information. You never have all of it, but you should be able to see as much of it as you can in a way that makes sense to you, so that then you can make your own decision on what works and what doesn't work for you.
Yes, informed consent is essential, and also just having all the choices there so that nothing is being pushed out by certain gatekeepers. And I think, in the US, we know who that gatekeeper is. That's the sinister Dr. Fauci, and he blocks all the natural stuff from getting through, or even really great insights or breakthroughs that aren't in alignment with what big pharma wants. He's been the gatekeeper, has been blocking that all these years. And so we'll eventually get past the Dr. Fauci's of the world and the Health Canadas of the world, and all these bodies have been put in the way of natural healing as we come out of this. But the only way to remove them at this stage is we have to go through a rough moment, because things have got to be shaken up for those gatekeepers to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. This kind of brings us full circle, because you just mentioned that awareness is freedom, and you spoke of your detox program and the importance of doing detox, because it actually brings it to a place of much more awareness of even what's going on. And even meditation then is a tool that we use to not get totally tied into the experiences that we're moving through, but to become the awareness that is observing the circumstances, the interactions, the emotions, so I think that's really key there too. The building up the level of awareness that we have on what we haven't really been noticing all this time.
Well said. Well said. I mean, that's one of the great things about meditation, and that combination, right? The Western will with the Eastern meditation concept, bringing it together, that mystical union of opposites, is really where the magic is. And I think some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world have understood that they somehow had a deep meditation practice, but also had the will to power to bring those two things together. And now we're giving birth to new types of entrepreneurs that have a whole new ethic, right? Which is, hey, let's stop destroying our ecosystem, and let's also advance, and let's create technologies that are natural and sustainable, and that it can be applied to everyone's life. And that all that's coming. It's going to be coming down the road, and we've got some really good times ahead of us, and some rough times, and depending on your attitude, I guess. And we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, so stay on your Jing foods. Take home message: stay on your Jing foods for the next decade or two. David,
when you get into it, I was just going to say, black rice is the new brown rice. The black bean thing all of a sudden means. You're like, black beans. Oh yeah, it's good. Black. Let's do black beans. And you suddenly start, everything just becomes about this whole thing of like, well, geez, well, maybe what other black foods I've got over here? Okay, we got these blackberries. We got this, in Peru, they have black potatoes. And interestingly, I was talking to a Paco down there, a shaman who, he didn't speak any English, so it was all in Spanish, but he had described that the longest lived person he knew was his mom, and his mom lived to be 120.
Whoa.
And I said, what did she eat? And he said she lived on coca and black potato soup. And I was like, interesting. He could have said any color, could have been any color, could have been anything, but he said black potato soup. And I was like, oh, wow, what do you know? And I've heard that over the years so many times of different things like that. It's like when you really look at the tonic substances, like chocolate, for example, this cacao that we looked at, it's a black, purple, and brown substance, and those colors have meaning. When we look at chaga mushroom, it's a black, brown, and yellow substance, mostly black, that's growing as a growth out of the tree. When you look at reishi, it's a red substance. And by the way, I will say this, a friend of mine finally got to the Shaolin monastery there in China and met with the head medical director of Shaolin, and that by the way is the origin of all Chinese medicine. And he was expecting to walk into this person's office and see chews everywhere. Chews are those big containers with the ginseng embryos in them, and those kind of things. And he was expecting drawers of herbs, and there was nothing in there. It was completely zen, all white. And he had one chair, one table, and one shelf. And on the shelf was a shaga and a reishi mushroom. That's it, and the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And he came back from that trip, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this." I'm like, I'll believe just about anything. What's up? And because he's really into reishi and I'm really into shaga, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this. I've got something for you." And so after that trip, he was really into shaga, and I got really into reishi. We kind of flip flop. We were like, "Wait, what?" So we were onto it just by intuiting from our own environment over here in North America what these ancients had deduced before there was televisions and automobiles and everything in their medical system. And I was like, wow, well, what do you know? So we can start thinking about things. We start going, okay, what black walnut hull? Yep. Right. It's black. What else would be in there? Okay. Black rice and rice, black beans. What else is in there? Blackberries. Okay. And we just go down the list and we just try to add whatever we can that's in. One of the great things about this neighborhood here in Texas is that we have black persimmons that grow here wildly, and it's a wild food here. Wow. And that's amazing, like little black thing, and you're like, whoa. And I was talking to this young girl who, my friend's daughter, the other day, and she's like 10 years old, and I said, what do you think about those black foods out there? And she's like, well, I like them, but they have too many seeds.
Well, even kind of getting into like some of the fulvic acids and stuff like that too, right?
That's right. Fulvic and humic acid colors black. Yeah. I have a really good one. I do want to mention, I don't know if you guys have a particular one that you like, but this one right here, the Black Brew Blend by my friend Dr. Newsom up there in Boise, Idaho. We stopped in to see him recently. That's pure fulvic and pure humic acid. This stuff is so awesome. Oh my God. And it just turns everything black.
Wow.
Yeah, probably like one of the best heavy metal removers you can find naturally too. So, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, nature's pharmacy, it's endless. And everything is often outside, not too far from you too, the ones that you probably really need, So David, that was awesome. Loved it.
Thank you so much,
what a
David.
wonderful conversation.
Thank you both. That was awesome.
Any final comments you want to say, and anything else? And then maybe just mention a little bit of where people can learn more about your work, where they can check out the stuff that you're doing, maybe a little bit about the 11/11 Iceland movie. I watched some of that.
We're going to hop on your detox too. Hopefully we can even get the information and catch up with you and do that alongside as well.
Nice. Fantastic. Okay. You're not too far behind. I've had people come in a month behind and caught up. Okay. So first things first is wherever you are, your ecosystem is a riddle, and that's the way God has presented it to us. And so there's everything you need to survive is always right around you. So we came here to Texas last year and we thought, okay, we've got to figure out this ecosystem. We've learned all these lessons over the years. What are we doing? So interestingly, right now is the pine pollen season. This is the dominant tree here. That pine pollen hits the ground. It's a steroid for the earth itself. It causes everything to spring until to life. It's one of the secrets of growth. It's like gibberellic acid. It stimulates growth of plants. And in you, it's like bioidentical testosterone, good for both men and women, incredible source of protein and minerals, and it's a wild food. Right below it, this is part of the riddle that we're understanding here, is saw palmetto. And all the way across the south, right below the loblolly pine, is a saw palmetto, and they're paired up with each other. And palmetto is the prostate date. And by the way, it's black. Yeah. It's a black date, and they're good. And I put like 5 or 6 or 10 in my mouth and just chew them up. And it's just wonderful. There's just plenty growing around here. And so you got the testosterone there, and you got the prostate right there. You go out into the Arizona desert, there's things like that, like the saguaro cactus, right? Your saguaro cactus is your food for the whole year. It's your endurance food to get across those deserts. That's the big cactus with the big arms. It produces a fruit for 3 weeks out of the year. And if you're not there, the animals, the bugs, the wild mountain lions will get 100% of it. That's how good it is. And that food right below it, guess what's growing right there? The goji berry, the wild Arizona goji berry is right below it. And so that kind of understanding of your environment as a riddle is really key. And it's beautiful. Just go out and just be there with innocent perception and just start learning. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is this process of studying and, getting into all these books is really a process of learning about creation and, learning about the mind of God, essentially. And it's so infinite and so beautiful and wonderful that eventually I decided I wanted to do a film that was kind of outside of my normal realm of nutrition and health and do something that was more on philosophy and attitude. And that became our film, Iceland 1111, which I joined forces with my friend Yori Storr, currently in Portugal. He's heading back this way. We're getting him back over here, who was one of the cinematographers in BBC Planet Earth. So that's how we met. And we had a mutual friend who created BBC Planet Earth. And so he's like, this is my best guy. And so I was like, I'm taking him. So he came with us. So if you ever get the chance to watch 1111 Iceland, I think you'll have some eye candy and some thought candy to mull over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. When I watch some of it, it's I think of so many things like a frequency, like you're just sort of in a place where it allows you to attune to, how I wouldn't say like source or divinity, but it just creates a space for that, and it creates a bit of a silence within yourself. So really, really beautiful. So, and best place for people to learn more of your work. Where can people head to?
You can track me down at davidwolfe.com, DAVIDWOLFE. And you can also find what I'm onto like day to day at The Best Day Ever, all 4 of those words together, thebestdayever.com or thebestdayever.com/links, like linking to other sites, LINKS. And that's usually my update of what I'm doing at the moment.
Awesome. We'll make sure we've got those links in the show notes, and so people can learn more about David's work, and they will get a link specifically to the detox that you're doing as well, so people can kind of go directly to there. And David, awesome. Such a wonderful, that was just awesome.
I think
such a great chance to talk to you about all that stuff.
Yeah, and when you say innocent perception, David, I think that's the part where speaking to you, it's so apparent, and that comes across so readily and fully, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Right on. Thank you both. Cheers.